Anyway, I found the video. However, I point blank, if you guys ever try to make me watch another Yankee Tanky video, or like the video where Keffels is like debating some like genocide denier, I will ban you. I won't actually ban you, but I'm not going to do that. Don't bring it up as a possibility, because I don't need brain cancer. I don't need that in my life. All right.
Video is called "No, Socialism Hasn't Failed." Let me see if the audio is good.
Why are there so much?
Yeah, that's fine.
Why are there so much fewer?
God, the React Inception on the screen right now. Jesus Christ, dude. I'm sorry. This is chaotic. This is chaotic as hell.
Interest in specifically socialism, like, because we live in a weird era where pretty much everyone is willing to say that they don't like capitalism.
What?
Right? We live in a weird era where pretty much everybody is willing to say that they don't like capitalism.
What? I mean, I think a lot of people would say they're dissatisfied with what's going on in their lives financially. I don't know that everyone is on board the socialism train or on board the don't like capitalism train. Most people don't even really think about what capitalism is. Or when they think of capitalism, they just think about buying and selling things.
But why are there so many people?
I actually don't know if that's true. I think that she's talking about people who are on the left or people who call themselves progressives. I don't think that the average person actually cares that much.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I mean, I think if you like put a gun to like the average person's head, I think most of them would say they want capitalism, and if they're, politically aware enough, they're probably like, well, I want capitalism, but like how they do it in Norway, like that's what most people would say if you like really press them on it.
Who are unwilling to say that they support. So,
and by the way, I think that's largely born out of like just not knowing what socialism is or how that would be better or how it could be done in a realistic way, So like part of what I try to do on my channel is tell people it's possible to do socialism and here's how we can do it, with democratic worker co-ops and like shifting our economic priorities over time, like there are tangible policies we can enact to get more, business structures in America owned and operated by the workers as opposed to outside capitalists who don't give a fuck about the final product or consumers.
Socialism or communism, right? Why? Well, it's because a lot of people have been...
By the way, I just noticed something, that in the background of this video, she is watching a Second Thought video. And now remember, to the people who are here who are unaware, Second Thought is a Marxist-Leninist YouTuber, a very big YouTuber on the left. He's on the Deprogram Pod with Yagopnik and Hakeem, who are all...
Oh, I didn't actually know that. I didn't know that Second Thought was on a podcast with Hakeem. But that makes their videos make a whole lot more sense. Like a lot of these like Marxist-Leninist YouTubers tend to fall into tankyism, and also tend to all be in the same social group. It's weird.
Also Marxist-Leninist YouTubers. He has appeared in Communist Party USA conferences to basically both sides, the invasion of Ukraine, and to try to equally put blame on the Ukrainian people for being invaded. I'm just gonna go. I just wanted to give people the context here for the people who are unaware of this.
Tricked into thinking that socialism is a failed experiment, right? That, oh, well, the USSR collapsed, so that means that socialism is a failed experiment. And this is fundamentally why I spend so much time talking about countries like North Korea. Why I talk.
We're off to an interesting.
Wait, she did a misinformation speech for the international communist thing on Ukraine? Or he did? Ah, gotcha. Second thought. Gotcha.
Start here.
Talk about China, why I talk about Cuba, right? Because fundamentally, who has it better, chat? Who has it better? The
What?
poorest
Oh my God.
person in China or the
Oh my God,
poorest
dude.
person in the United States?
Oh my God, dude. Did I call this or did I call it, man? I called this argument. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Fundamentally, at the end of the day, who is living a better life? The poorest person in China or the poorest person in the United States?
It doesn't get any better? Okay, excellent.
The answer,
Is
in my opinion,
she going to elaborate on this point?
is undeniable that the poorest person in China is living a better life than the poorest person in the United States.
I really are we I would really love data points on that. I like did she go to China and interview the poorest person in China? That somebody in China was like saddled with $10 billion in debt or something?
Right? Just like
I mean, first of all, like, it's not true. There are definitely like really poor areas in the United States. There are places in the United States and in Canada.
Which, by the way, like, Keffels is 100% correct. Like, if you guys don't think that there are some, like, dirt poor areas of the United States, let me just pull this up. I was gonna actually do this as, like, content. Yeah. I
don't have any.
I was gonna go over this video. There's a channel called Peter Santinello, and he's been doing like a lot of in-depth kind of like interviews with people who live in Appalachia. And it's really, really cool. Like, it's really interesting to see. I'm gonna just pull this up.
North Carolina.
So he talked to a guy who's lived for the past half century with no electricity or no like outside support, really, just doing his thing in the middle of nowhere in Appalachia, and like, it's wild, dude.
If the grid went down, how long do you think you could sustain out here?
Me personally, probably indefinitely.
This is so cool. It's like a spaceship.
People's first thought is all the stuff they're going to have to give up. What I want to focus in is all the stuff you're going to get. Fennel, really good for digestion, and yarrow's good for wounds, and Scanaceae everybody knows about. This was a very fun project. The biggest machine that's ever been on this land would be a chainsaw.
Where do you think, as a society, where things are heading?
I was very naive when I started. It's wanting a better life, but it's also being worried that the life you have back in the city is not going to work forever.
So we'll go over this sometime, but like, basically some people out in Appalachia are just like, they are boned, you know, and like you go out in the woods with a chainsaw and that's what you got, okay?
If it wasn't for coal mines, a lot of these people around here would be starving to death.
Feels like everybody picked up and left.
Here's him going around.
I came from a long line of...
an abandoned, and mostly abandoned and like discombobulated rural town. But yeah, this is the poorest region in America.
drug users. I will be the first in my family to hold a college degree.
Are you the grandma of the holler?
I guess.
Massive hit to a community like this.
I want to show people that we are
literally so poor that Walmart pulled out.
more than just drugs and coal mining.
We work hard, we support our families, and we don't let nobody step in between that.
This place got me a little emotional. Good morning, guys. Here in Bluefield, West Virginia. And today we have quite an adventure we're going on, driving through the south side of West Virginia, all the way over to Kentucky. And this is known, arguably, is one of the most impoverished places in the country. Now, this is former coal country. The industry was booming at one time. It's retracted quite a bit. Many people have left, but some have stayed. So today we're gonna get far out as we can, into the sticks, to meet the locals, ask the questions, learn from them.
Yeah, we'll watch these eventually. I watched a bit of some of them. They're pretty interesting. But also, like, poor people in America, like, have a lot of civil freedoms, and the poor people in China don't really. Was that RimWorld music playing in the video? No, that would be funny though. I went to some of the dirt poor areas of China when I visited. They lived with less, but they were more able to be self-sufficient, far more agrarian. Yeah, well, like, that's the thing, right? Like, I'm not going into it right now, but yeah.
That are absolutely third world conditions. I can't speak for the United States. I'm not from there, but, you know, from the country I used to call home, Canada.
Hey, Ryla.
A lot of people living on reserves, no access to clean drinking water. They have to fly in and out in...
Oh, yep. Good point, Josephine Lucian. If you look at the poorest towns in the U.S., many of them are in Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Boo-woo indeed.
Salmon Moose, thank you for the tier 4 sub. Let's go. Thank you very much for the support. Yeah, no, like, there are homeless people in China. There are, like, people suffering without, like, resources in China. Like, and you know what? Oftentimes, if they are being inconvenient enough to the state, they'll just get swept up by police and thrown into prison. You know, like, it's not great. My town, you either have people in antebellum mansions or rent shacks. If you're well off like me, you have a single wide. Gotcha. Hey, Austonian Knight, how you doing? There are people in prison, China. It's true. There are people in prison in China. The median income in the town my family is from in Puerto Rico is 12.5K. Damn. Yeah, Puerto Rico and basically, like, any area that America has turned into a territory but not into a state gets really, really shafted economically. You get expelled when you're caught on land not yours in America. In China, they are tortured and killed. I don't know if they're tortured and killed. Like, I genuinely haven't looked into what China does with the homeless population enough, but I do know they imprison them. You know, they make sure that you know, if media's coming, no one's gonna make them look too bad. There is no poor in Ba Sing Se. Yeah.
In order to see a doctor, they rely on, like, food transit by plane because there's no other way to get in and out of where they live other than plane. At the same time, it's a hard argument to make because it requires you to examine so many variables. What is the infrastructure like? What is transport like? In places like China, freedom of movement is limited. In places
in a city of 4,000, there are 125 churches. That's crazy.
Like North Korea, in Cuba, in Vietnam, freedom of movement is limited. There's no...
Wait, every territory should receive statehood, in my opinion, or be given the option to be independent. Yeah, honestly, like leaving them in kind of like a quasi situation doesn't really help, you know? Like it's not good. It just allows more wiggle room for morally bankrupt companies to move in and just absolutely strip the natural resources and abuse the labor force.
No way to actually leave, at least in Canada and the United States. And this has been a big thing of people fleeing to the cities to escape the extreme poverty of some more rural areas. But I'm also kind of shocked that Benny makes these statements and then never elaborates on them.
For example, the poorest person in North Korea is living a much better life than the poorest person in South Korea.
What?
Right?
No. 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 Okay, there's so for those of you who don't know, there's kind of like a branch of tanky rhetoric where they argue that in North Korea, all of the businesses are collectively run by workers that work at that business, except also it's an authoritarian autocratic regime with supreme authority vested in a god king who can literally just throw people into work camps and work them to death at a whim. Yeah, so the thinking here is like, well, they work in democratic worker co-ops, and yeah, their living situation day to day isn't that great, but you know, at the end of the day, even though they're all impoverished, they're working together and keeping one another alive, and that's kind of the line of thinking there. Like, oh, they have it all, you know, they make do with what they got, and what they got isn't much, but they're doing the best they can. But like, what are you doing? Why? We know that they work people to death in prison camps. We know that they are horrible to their population. And we have no actual real verifiable data on the everyday living conditions in North Korea because, newsflash, no one can just go around and explore North Korea because they'll be murdered. If you go to North Korea, like, I'm pretty sure you either have to have like a person who is showing you around specifically to places that they have designated for like tourism, or they have somebody like tailing you. You know, like it's one of those two things. You know, there's no other real option there. And probably also everything is bugged. Like everything is bugged to spy on you. Also, just don't go to North Korea. It's a bad place to go. Don't do it. There's a non-zero chance that they will abduct you. International news literally went to North Korea and showed apartments for the first time, and it looked awful. North Korea allowed the media in saying, look at this cool progress. Oh no. Oh no. Dennis Rodman did. Wait. International media, North Korea apartment. Is this it? Oh, okay, wait. Is this what you were talking about? Gamer G? Kim Jong-un gives North Korea's most famous TV anchor a luxury home. Is that what you were talking about, or was it something else? National Geographic? Okay. Okay, now this looks like it is probably from part of an actual series that I will get DMCA'd if we show any of it on stream. So, we're not gonna throw that one up. I'm sorry, folks.
Right?
Okay, this is what I mean. No one knows what the poorest region of North Korea even is. There's
True. True. We don't even know what regions poverty is located in North Korea. And my guess is all of them.
no way for you to go to North Korea and go on an unguided tour. I know people who have gone to North Korea. You can only go to the capital city of Pyongyang, and you need to be escorted by a state-approved guide at every single step. You cannot leave your hotel without someone who is a representative of the state watching over you. So how do you even make that claim?
I don't know, man. You just go based on vibes, okay? Like, you go to Pyongyang, and if you just get a good vibe, then that means socialism worked, okay? If you like, Dennis Rodman went to North Korea and he said it had good vibes, so it must have been a good socialism. It's true. Tankies do be based on vibes, though. Well, yeah, tankies are basically the astrologers of the political left. Okay, they're all about astrology, man.
Even the poorest person in a poor country like Cuba, right, is living a better life than the poorest person in the United States. This is very important.
Okay. I think I could see Cuba in this circumstance, but again, this is one of those things where you're making these huge, bold claims without actually elaborating on anything. I've been to Miami.
I don't think that Cuban poor folks are doing that great, though. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why tourism is one of the biggest industries in Cuba right now. It's because they don't have anything else to rely on for their economy outside of doing doctor stuff, and even that's difficult because they can't fund their hospitals. A lot of their public health care is kind of falling apart because and some of their infrastructure too, because they haven't been able to build anything for decades. Well, yeah, the embargo from the United States absolutely has destroyed their economy. There's no reason for us to be embargoing Cuba anymore. None whatsoever. That's something that should have been gone yesterday. And I don't know, at this point we're just kind of doing it because it's tradition or something. Yeah, Cuba would be doing much, much better without the embargo. It's a perfect trading port location. But it can't be for as long as the US embargoes it. You're doing it so that communism can't thrive. But I don't know enough about the internal economy of Cuba to know, but I know they participate in capitalism at least to a limited degree. I don't know how, as opposed to with the USSR and China, both of those engage in capitalism, right? I know enough about their economies to know that. I genuinely don't know how Cuba's economy works. If any of you have a good paper I can read on the Cuban economy, or a book or something, I would love to read that. If any of you have any suggestions in chat.
Miami. I've been to Havana. The poorest person I saw in Miami was begging.
Oh yeah, they have great doctors in Cuba. Cuba produces some of the best doctors in the world. It's just they don't have resources.
For money on the street in order to eat. The people who are begging for money in Havana are making more than the average Cuban because the state wage in Cuba is $20 a month. And that's
Jesus.
not me shitting on Cuba. Cuba is a country that has struggled quite a bit economically. Cuba is a country that has been under an economic blockade by the United States, a very unjust one that hurts the average person there quite a bit. But I think that making these really bold claims without any citations or proof.
Well, look, you know, being a leftist is all about just saying things. You know, and by saying things often enough, we make them so. Like, Cornel West can be a viable candidate for president of the United States. If we just say it enough, that will make it so. To large swaths of people on the left, okay? There is a huge number of people on the left who don't need any type of evidence to actually underpin their positions. What is dead may never die.
Are just really harmful.
Important. This is very, very important to understand because fundamentally it means that socialism is not a failed experiment.
Oh, wait. It's
What about Marianne Williamson? What about her?
actually 40 US a month now, but that's still just as, yeah, it is actually just as bad. 40 US a month is what the average Cuban gets as a wage. Like, from my time talking to Cubans, being to Cuba, talking to people who every single year go on like volunteer work trips to Cuba, the majority of Cubans have to engage in black market trade to get by. They can't afford to raise their families on the state wage. There's so much black market activity for basically everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's similar to how in the USSR, like, you basically had to eventually, like, the only way to get, like, actual goods that you needed was to go through the black market. Like, this is not an uncommon thing, which I'm inclined to think that, like, Cuba has, like, some sort of command economy, just based on the proliferation of a black market. That command economies and black markets tend to go hand in hand. If we could all just force the vote, Cuba would be free. Yeah, exactly. I've heard from people who either have been to Cuba or knew someone who did, the most honest analysis is their media is entirely state-controlled propaganda, and that there is not much press freedom. They run on very old tech and cars, but overall it's not bad, and the art is incredible. This was Havana, though. Well, yeah, and I mean, like, Havana's built to basically be a tourist trap. Like, in its heyday before the embargo, like, it was like, you know, the Las Vegas of the southern seas, you know, like, it was a happening place. But I don't know if that's true of other places in Cuba, you know? And people say Keffels doesn't know anything about politics. Keffels knows... I will say this. Keffels knows more about politics than the vast majority of people on, like, BreadTube or, like, leftist streaming spaces, okay? Like, she actually knows her shit. Probably more than Vosh. I don't know, you know, maybe more than Vosh. Though I've heard he's read all theory. Definitely more than me. Like, I have a pretty honest assessment of, like, my knowledge and capabilities. I think Keffels knows quite a bit more than me. And that's fine. Mostly because, like, where I'm operating on, what I'm operating on and, like, how I advocate is just kind of like, most people can't even meet me on the basics, you know? And I just want people to know that socialism is possible, you know? Keffels is also a legend. Well, yeah, that goes without saying. It's not hard if we make BreadTube broad enough. I mean, it's not hard if we don't make BreadTube broad even.
One thing, though, you see this a lot, especially in the tourist areas. People are going there, panhandling just to get the tourist bucks because they know they can get a lot of money. They can get more money doing that than through working a state job in Cuba. It's a really shitty situation. And once again, pointing out that I'm not saying this in order to disparage Cuba. I think that the blockade needs to end. The blockade is very much hurting the average Cuban to the point where medical supplies, I don't know if this is still the case, but the last time I looked, like back in 2017, they were not able to get new needles in hospitals, and they had to sterilize and reuse single-use syringes in their public hospitals. It was a very bad situation. It's one thing to say they have public health care, but the quality of that health care can really range depending on what's available. There are regular shortages, like acetaminophen, paracetamol, Advil, Tylenol. Any sort of headache medication is usually always in short supply. And painkillers, definitely always also in short supply.
Is in fact a very, very successful program. Socialism is not a failed experiment. Socialism is in fact a very, very successful program of alleviating poverty and meeting people's needs.
That's not socialism, though. Socialism isn't when you alleviate poverty or meet people's needs. Those are things that are good to have to advance, like, socialist ideas. But socialism at its heart is about getting workers in control of the means of production, i.e., like, you know, putting them in control over their workplaces. Like, a worker in a workplace should have a say in how that workplace is run. That's what socialism is. Like, at the very baseline, that's what you have to have in order to be socialist. It's not when no poverty exists. The theory behind socialism would be when workers own and operate their own workplaces and are able to take those risks, society as a whole benefits. It wouldn't necessarily completely eliminate poverty unless we also paired policies that, like, encourage, like, democratic worker co-ops, for example, with things like socialized medicine, or, like, decommodified housing initiatives, or, you know, certain ways of, like, reorienting our energy systems and energy grid to meet people's needs. Like, these are things that alleviate the coercive power of capital, but they aren't what socialism is at the heart of it. And if you aren't willing to accept that, if you're saying, like, oh, well, no, it's actually alleviating poverty, what you want is not socialism. What you want is a kinder capitalism, which is a fine thing to want, but I would disagree that is going to solve the problems. I would instead argue that, like, capitalism inherently will undo kind of the chains of kindness, the regulations and things that keep it controlled and kind, in order to rampage across society and reap as much profit as possible, because that's what capitalism is designed to do. You know, it's like saying, well, if we take the lion home and we train it right, it will just be a really nice lion. You know, it won't rip our faces off. It won't eat us and rip our tracheas from our bodies while we're screaming. Like, it won't do that if we train it well. And then one day being surprised that a fucking lion ripped out your trachea. like it's not a sustainable system, because the thing that is being controlled inherently wants to destroy you for profit.
That is what socialism is all about.
Okay, socialism is not about poverty alleviation. Socialism is about the workers' control of the economy. The abolish.
Hell yes! Okay. See, this is why I know Keffels is a good egg, chat. This is how I know Keffels is a good egg. She actually understands what the fuck the terms mean. she knows what it means to be a socialist, which is surprisingly rare in this space. And I, as a socialist, appreciate that. I also love eggs. It's true. Keffel's good egg confirmed. Democratize the workplace. Exactly, Soci Inertia. And thank you for being on riverboat.gg. Yeah, by the way, there are so many cool ways we can organize, labor and make this something that works in the long term. I was watching Vosh go over a video where Ethan Klein's one of Ethan Klein's co-hosts was like trying to convince him that socialism was the way, and Ethan was like, nah, capitalism is good though. And it's just like part of the frustration I feel when I see those conversations is like, if you understood... Aw, very knifey duck.
Snipe.
Thank you for sniping Soci Inertia and getting them a tier 1 sub. That's very kind of you. But like, if you understood what socialism was, right? You could get at the heart of the issue, because it's not when there are no poor people. Socialism isn't when authoritarian state capitalism. It's not when, there's a command economy. These things are not socialist. Socialism at its heart is about getting workers in control over their own workplaces via democracy. It's about replacing the totalitarian structure that we currently rely on for private businesses and replacing that with democratic systems. That's all it is. And we can then reduce coercive power that capital has and give people the ability to experiment, to try new things in society and take risks, but like financial risks, like going into business in a democratic co-op. We can facilitate that, right? But it's so frustrating because people just go like, oh, well, it's when you're nice to people, but then why should somebody who is relatively pro-capitalist not just look at Norway and be like, let's have that instead? Why do we have to be socialist? And then not seeing people not have an answer for that. That's like the most basic question. It's like the next step. And it's just like, well, you have to have a rebuttal to that. And the rebuttal is what I just said. A lion is going to be a lion. Okay? Capitalism is going to be a capitalism. It's going to try and rip your face off, no matter what you try to chain it with. So that was frustrating, and I just need people to be aware. But Jack, co-op business is boring capitalist garbage. I'm going to talk about theory and shitpost online instead. Well, and that's the thing. Like, my philosophy about leftist and leftism is that you shouldn't have to be a genius. You shouldn't have had to read a ton of theory in order to wrap your head around why democracy in the workplace is a good idea. And in this video where Vosh was going over it, one thing I noticed was in the video, Vosh started talking about like, oh, well, just inherently it's good because you can vote on who your boss is. And my gut instinct to that was like, well, that's one way you could set up a democratic co-op. That might not be a sustainable way to set up every democratic co-op or large democratic co-ops, but it could work on smaller scales, right? But there are a lot of different ways we could attach democracy into where people work. Whether that is maintaining relatively hierarchical structures, but having like, essentially replacing like investors in companies and investor meetings with worker meetings, where workers are dictating what the priorities of the overall company are going to be for the next financial quarter or something, and have the ability to like voice concerns. Or we could have just a flat structure. Flat structures work fine for, relatively small businesses. So, like, there are so many ways we could set up democratic co-ops. And I think that to some degree, we need to figure out what are the best ways to do that. And I think that means there needs to be like a period where people are experimenting with democratic worker co-ops and how to like organize. You know? Fuck the stock market. What? Who talked about the stock market? I've known a lot of union organizers who never had any theory. They're very effective socialists. Well, yeah. Ultimately, we need to have arguments that reach people who don't give a shit about theory and aren't going to read Marx. We need to parasite the current system. The execs should be elected positions. Or at the very least, whatever governing board needs to be like legally and utterly bound to the will of the workforce, you know? I'm sure, let me put it this way. There are ways you can organize a democratic co-op to have essentially direct democracy involved in like positions and decision making, and there are ways you could have a representative democracy in a company, you know? And maybe one is going to work better than the other in like certain organizational structures. That's all I'm saying. Like there are going to be other like ways to organize companies in really interesting ways that haven't really been tried that much. Money should not be remotely allowed to vote. Nope. One worker, one vote in these companies, for sure. Fuck the stock market, distribute all the stock to the workers. You know, I understand that impulse. I don't like the stock system necessarily. I'm sure there could be a way to adapt it for a democratic co-op, but ultimately I don't like maybe when you leave the company you like can keep holding onto the shares, but you don't get more shares. Like you get one share for every year you worked at the company or something. But when you leave the company, they become non-voting shares. Like, I don't know. There may be a way to, like, organize something like that. I'm not an expert when it comes to, like, shares. All I'm saying is there are ways we can organize it. There are very successful horizontal democratic co-ops where everyone is just equal footing. There's no hierarchy. And then there are examples of extremely complicated hierarchical democratic co-op structures. All I'm saying is, like, there are a lot of ways we could do this, and some of them involve voting in your boss, some of them don't. Who knows what might work the best? Hey, Via Win, how you doing? Hope you're doing all right. There has to be some way to raise capital for a business. Well, okay, but I didn't mean to go on like a whole tangent about like how I would try and fix this. But again, I've talked about this before at length. That's why I think we need to, as like socialists, organize around the concept of postal banking. I think getting postal banking reinstated would go a long way to creating vehicles and delivery mechanisms for financial investment into democratic co-op creation. Because again, there's a lot of incentive for the state to invest in such organizations, but not that much for private entities to invest in such organizations. So I think having a post office bank would actually be the perfect mechanism to distribute funds to essentially provide capital, startup capital for democratic co-op businesses. I was here for one of those rants. I need to put one of those rants out in like a video that's actually accessible. So many people are just going to completely ignore a video where I'm like, I talk about democratic co-ops, because people find those boring. But I think they're basically the best vehicle we have for transitioning our economy into a worker-based economy. I'm working on some literature coming out describing exactly those co-op structures. In any decent worker co-op, you cannot sell your shares. It's kind of antithetic to the idea of workplace democracy. If you can buy up all the shares, you're rich enough, and then you just have capitalism again. Well, yeah, that's exactly it, Gamer G. So, like, my question would be, how do we convert shares into, like, money what's the point of putting it in shares even if like you can't cash out? Or do you just cash out when you quit the company? I guess that's where I'm at. Trans economy, hell yeah. Maybe do a scripted essay. Oh god, that's so much work though. It's so much work. I say, having been streaming 3 hours of content so far. How to save the West. Oh damn, Stoudman, you are so right. You are so right. I'm gonna prep my presentation. We're gonna call it "How to Save the West." Oh god, that's gonna be an absolute banger. Thank you for the suggestion, Stoudman. 100%. That's what I'm gonna call it. I'll put like a Greek statue. I'll put a Greek statue on the cover. They say the West is falling, but I know the way to fix it. I alone can fix it. Oh no. How to save the West. Hell, I'll even give the stream that title. Yeah, a Roman statue. Yeah. Yeah. Like a cosplay Roman legionnaire. Well, shit. Rope them chuds in, let's go. Oh, they'll be so mad. I already make them so mad. Like, did you guys see the video on the YouTube that I put out, where I said pronouns are destroying Western civilization or something? That made conservatives so fucking mad. That video did numbers. Oh god. Maybe the secret to cracking the algorithm on YouTube is just portraying my videos as conservative-leaning videos, and then they click on the video and they see a big titty trans woman talking about socialism. Conservative clickbait, yeah. Titty. Well, chat, this is your top of the hour ad break. We've been going for 3 hours so far. And if you've been enjoying stream, please hit the follow button on Twitch, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, hit the like button on the stream if you're on riverboat.gg or YouTube. Do the things, because, guys, when you do that, it does make these videos and this stream show up in conservative feeds, and we hilariously occasionally get people wandering into YouTube chat being like, why the hell did YouTube suggest I watch this here socialist? And you know what? I love it, because it gives them an opportunity to change and get better, all right? And soon, they're all about the socialism, baby. The socialiscy, as it's called by the kids these days. They get to think a bit. Maybe. That's the hope. All right.
Establishment of the commodity form and a system of democratic ownership of society by the people that run it. If you
Damn, she even included the abolishment of the commodity form. That's pretty cool.
You make the argument that socialism is about poverty alleviation, you open yourself up to some pretty
Seize the means of producing. Oh god. That's how I connect with the Zoomers, chat. I just add ussy on the end of random words.
weird positions. Because then you can say that Hitler and his National Socialist Party was successful because they raised wages significantly since the days of the Weimar Republic. I also think that it's a very
they cut down on waste, and just got a weirdly large influx of gold from Switzerland.
anti-communist argument.
Have I seen videos from Leah Miller? Let me see if searching that on Google jogs my memory.
Hi there, my name's Lee.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched these videos, but I have had them recommended to me. I don't know anything about her. Them? Uh, I mean, the videos just at a glance look good. Damn, her videos do numbers too. 30-minute long segments, about every week or so. That's pretty cool. She seems good. Wait, what are the channel recommendations? About lawyer, legal history. Okay, she's a she, her. What's tablerock.com? Go check that out. Alright. Wait, what is this? Okay. So, I'm not sure how I feel about this. She seems to be using, like, this company to boost her engagement. I mean, I guess that's fine. It just makes me feel a little bit like, huh. That's a bit weird, but I mean, it seems to be working for her numbers, so if she makes good content, I'm not mad about it. 3 more links? What are the more links? I want to know what the more links are.
Hi there, my name's...
Anyway, I don't know. She's probably a good egg. My main thing, guys. I'm not ever looking to pick a fight with somebody, really, unless they're being a dumb fuck. And she seems nice and fine, and also lives in the same city as me, so gotta show some solidarity, okay? Oh shit, where's the video? Where were we at? Here we go. That's not it. There it is.
To try and say that socialism is about poverty alleviation for the reason that you are basically, in the case of China, in the case of the Soviet Union, what reduced and alleviated poverty was not a socialist economy. It was the introduction of state capitalism into a feudal society. You are cheering on the achievements of state capitalism as socialism.
True. See, again, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing I was talking about when it comes to when it came to like that Ethan Klein talk with his co-host. Like, if the framing of the conversation is that socialism is just poverty alleviation, you don't have an actual argument for socialism, right? You have an argument for anything that and any policy that might alleviate poverty, even if it's in a convoluted and terrible way.
It is quite literally the opposite of a failure. Even look at the USSR, which did fall apart, right? If you look at the USSR, you will see very clearly that they were very...
I'm still upset that she hasn't... I'm upset that she hasn't actually given any like data points or talked at all about how the life of the average North Korean that's poor is better than the average South Koreans that's poor. Like, I'd love to see some data on that.
Very, very successful in expanding women's rights. They were very...
The USSR made abortion illegal. You can make like the women's rights are
Whoa, whoa, whoa. They might have made abortion illegal, but they allowed women to play sports. They put women in the sports. I know that. I've seen historical films. Her data is she made it the fuck up. Well, yeah. I mean that is a lot of tanky data. A lot of tanky data is I made it the fuck up or horribly misconstrued it on purpose. Which is it? You'll never know.
arguments for like the 1920s, but the Soviet Union existed from 1917 until 1991. Quite a lot happened. And for the majority of the existence of the USSR, it was not legal to get an abortion. Under the government's reasoning was that exploitation was abolished and that they didn't need to worry about bringing children into a world where they would suffer, and that's why they were
Yep, no exploitation in the Soviet Union. No sir. None whatsoever. These tankies be wildin'. They do, John Toms. Also, hello to YouTube chat.
like, we don't need abortion. It's very weird when you start looking into all of these things.
Successful in putting food on the table for people, right? They eliminated poverty.
They were successful in putting food on the table for people. Citation? Citation needed? What about the famines? What about the numerous famines? Citations needed.
Or they didn't eliminate entirely, but they alleviated poverty in the USSR, right? They expanded access to housing to an unbelievable degree, right?
Not to mention, this is a dumb argument because you can say that about the Nazis pre-1932. They did some populist progressive things to gain favor because that's what authoritarian governments
Don't look at the Holodomor, yeah.
have to do to gain power. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because like communists knew that too. They knew.
Oh no, Gamergy, the last resort of the tanky is basically just to say everything bad you've ever heard about China, North Korea, etc. is all just capitalist propaganda. It's from the State Department. You can't trust it. They're all lying, and actually both countries are just heavens on earth. They are true gardens of Eden.
Do that very well. It reminds me, what you just said reminds me of what Dimitrov, who was the leader of like the first Communist International, said about fascism. That they manipulate people by playing on people's traditions and by playing on progressive values when that's not what they believe in.
They made sure that people...
Oh yeah, God. Someone on Twitter actually today made the argument that the national... Oh god, no. Okay, we're not gonna watch the whole video, but I am gonna pull it up just to make the point, right? Oh god, it was so dumb. It was so dumb. Yeah. Okay. So, this guy, H.J. Graham, has just been up my asshole in the replies, trying to say Ukraine is full of Nazis, essentially. And then also, apparently, the Nazis here are Biden supporters. Huh, look at that. As evidence. Link to this video.
Christopher, there's a presidential race going on right now. Are you going to vote in 2024? What do you think is going to happen?
My vote is useless. I think Biden's better than Trump because he sends rockets to Ukraine.
In support of Ukraine, you mean?
Hell Ukraine. Hell Azov.
Love Ukraine. Tell me.
Roll, lads.
So, before we get to that, I do just want to point out
in support.
Literally, the people around him are just like chuckling because he made a joke. He's not serious about supporting Joe Biden.
I think Biden's better than Trump because he sends rockets to Ukraine.
What cyberpunk shit am I looking at? This is actually a neo-Nazi named Forget what he's named here. Let me pull it up. I actually have his name. Yeah, his name is Christopher Allen Polehouse. And he is one of the leaders of, I think, Blood Tribe is the name. Yeah, he's the leader of a neo-Nazi organization called Blood Tribe. That's been gaining prominence, and they're trying to build out like a militia camp in Maine. It's a whole thing. Hassan and Ethan had an amazing convo about socialism on H3 today. Well, good. I don't know that Hassan's super great at articulating socialism, but we'll take a look at it, I'm sure. But anyway, this guy linked to a video by Salty Cracker, who I assume is this guy, and we'll listen to the first couple seconds here.
When can I expect Joe Biden, the venerable Joe Biden, to come out and distance himself from these neo-Nazis? When will he condemn? When will he come out and tell everybody that he is not going to take the endorsement from whatever the shit this is over here? Joe Biden.
Dumb son of a bitch.
You gonna say anything about this? I wonder if Peter Ducey will ask that dipshit illiterate press secretary anything about this. Here you go. This out and
wait. Here we go. Sorry, got a little bit too far in.
Ruh-roh, lads. When can I expect Joe Biden?
I have no idea if Salty Cracker is a Nazi, but I'm gonna guess pretty sympathetic to all of the platforms of Nazis in America.
Venerable Joe Biden to come out and distance himself from these neo-Nazis. When will he condemn? When will he come out and tell everybody that he is not going to take the endorsement from what? Say anything about this? I wonder if Peter Ducey will ask that dipshit illiterate press secretary anything about
Salty
this.
Cracker is a Nazi.
This is totally not a psyop over here, where again you've got a bunch of neo-Nazis in Florida screaming how much they like Trump. Actually, they're screaming they hate Trump and that they're voting for Joe Biden. They hate Ron DeSantis, by the way. Now, granted, they're Nazis, so they're National Socialists, which would make them left-leaning, but I'm hyper confused considering.
Yeah, chat, if you ever hear somebody say the nationals, they're called National Socialists, so they're left-leaning, they're either one of the dumbest motherfuckers you've ever seen in your life, or they literally just saw the word socialist and assumed that Nazis tell the truth. Which is pretty fucking dumb. Or both. Yeah, no, I got about this far into the video and then I stopped. We're not watching the entire thing. But I'm bringing this up because, like, people will say, oh, it's socialism because it alleviated, they did some things that alleviated poverty. You know, like what Keffels was saying here in the video. And it's like, yeah, that's what we call a trick. That's what we call you being played for a fool. You know? Like these are neo-Nazis. This guy is the head of a neo-Nazi organization that's main objective recently has been to harass any LGBTQ positive events, like drag queen story hours, etc. Like that's been the thing that they've been doing, and the Southern Poverty Law Center recognizes it. And maybe even if you were like, wow, I totally believe they're socialist, maybe it would like trigger something in your brain to be like, wait a minute, Joe Biden is one of the most pro-LGBTQ presidents we've ever had, which is sad that it's a pretty low bar. Why would neo-Nazis approve of him? Why are the Nazis secretly like super pro gay and trans people? No, they're not. they they've literally tried to kill us since the beginning. Yeah, no, exactly, socio-inertia. That's what I usually bring up. Yeah, trusting a Nazi when they say they're National Socialists is like trusting North Korea when they claim to be a democratic republic. You know, yeah, 100%, 100%.
People were housed, that people were fed, that people were educated, that there was real.
But like, this is the thing, right? Like, if you're arguing, well, more people were fed, more people were educated, more people were housed, well, you can get instances of that under, like, a mercantilist economy run by a king. You can get instances of that under, like, you know, the Roman Empire. You know, you can get things like that under any political system and under any economic system. You can have instances where more people are being housed and fed and educated. Like, that's not outside the realm of possibility in a lot of economic systems. But what we're talking about here is not alleviating poverty. The primary thing we're talking about is workers democratically controlling their workplaces. That's what we're talking about, which will have the effect of alleviating poverty for a variety of reasons, like worker co-ops being more economically stable, paying employees better, improved employee happiness, more flexible hours and benefits. Like, there are a lot of reasons democratic worker co-ops would benefit people. But the benefits of that system aren't like, you know, well, if we could reach those under any other system, we should. No, because part of it is the inherent benefit of the freedom of democracy, which you can't get under other economic systems, which you can't get under other political systems that are not amenable to democracy in the workplace.
Real equality within the society, okay? These are all things. These are major, major successes. Socialism has succeeded everywhere that it has been tried.
What?
No. No, it hasn't. Why would you say that? Why would you say that, dude? That's... No. I'm sorry. It's incorrect. Like, China is capitalist right now. Russia disintegrated into capitalist states. Cuba participated in state capitalism in the past. I don't know if they still do. I don't know enough about their current economy to know. But, like, these aren't systems where workers are democratically controlling their workplaces. They're just not.
Okay, there's so many things that are wrong with this, and so many blanket statements. Was it cool that the USSR had a big housing boom? Yeah, but then there's the things that are left out of this, that there actually wasn't enough housing for everyone, that a lot of people ended up getting pushed into inadequate sized housing. And because of that, it ended up creating a lot more domestic violence because people didn't have adequate space. And when you put people, especially people who are living on the margins in close proximity, people...
Oh, yeah, of course, Gamer G, like, you know, when you democratically run your own co-op together, you know, like, there's profit sharing, there's, you know, increased ability to, like, change the organization for the better, and people feel like a sense of autonomy and like freedom doing so. Like, it's what makes democratic worker co-ops work as a model fundamentally is the sense of agency that people feel and the financial like incentives that they receive that, you know, pay them better wages, that give them better benefits, that give them more time off, you know? And in bad economic conditions, democratic worker co-ops have been shown to be more prone to, you know, people taking voluntary pay cuts rather than firing people outright because you know your coworkers. God damn.
Will get aggressive.
Wasn't Yugoslavia more socialist than the USSR? Soci inertia, everything I know about Yugoslavia would indicate yes. Yugoslavia, as far as I know, had a pretty, like it had a fairly authoritarian government, but it had closer to a democratic co-op style model of economy. It wasn't perfect, mind you, but like there's a lot of fond memories of like kind of the golden age of Yugoslavia before like its complete and utter collapse. And again, it collapsed largely as a result of oil prices fluctuating, which is kind of like why, you know, socialist or ostensibly socialist countries need to diversify their economies and not just rely on oil booms like Venezuela or Yugoslavia. It just is not great. Tito in Yugoslavia was the only person who successfully told Stalin to fuck off. Yeah, well, and Tito also wasn't a good guy. Like, I don't want to do apologia for Tito. Tito was also not good. But the economy of Yugoslavia was pretty interesting from an economic perspective. And a lot of things I believe were kind of done right there. But I would not say their government was a model for anyone.
With each other. It's like these little things where it's like you leave out all of the nitty gritty and you only talk about the praise when the reality of the situation is they were just getting by.
Oh yeah, Gamer G, like Tito absolutely got away with flipping off Stalin, but that's largely because Tito was like basically the only guy who was able to hold that country together.
Right? Like because the thing is, socialism did succeed in the USSR. It did. Just because the USSR collapsed and had an endpoint, because
socialism did not succeed in the USSR whatsoever. Socialism was almost doomed out of the gate at the start with the new economic policy. They reversed course right away.
There's an orc in the background of this video, not quite trolling, but I think the signifiers are pretty easy to read. Quasi-spec, I have no idea what that means.
This is another thing. It almost feels like it turns into idpol. It turns into like applying transgender self-identity politics to countries. And call me an idiot if I'm off base here, but it feels like this country says that they identify this way and you need to respect it. It feels like that because it's like they're getting mad, but you look at it and you know it's not a socialist country. This isn't to say I'm denigrating transgender people. I love my transgendies in chat. Shout out to you all.
Hey, that's me. That's me. I'm a transgendy.
Because of, once again, foreign intervention, right, doesn't mean that it wasn't successful, right? Because it quite literally was, right? Socialism was a successful project in the USSR. It literally took...
It's crazy. It's just crazy. Because it's like, no, it wasn't. In fact, socialism was so unsuccessful in the USSR, they needed to basically change the definition of socialism, which led to the introduction of socialism in one country, which is the modern Soviet-style government that you see around the world today. The initial...
Yeah, it's... again, like the Soviet model of socialism, really is just an authoritarian command economy that never stops being that. It's an authoritarian command economy that engages in state capitalism. That's all it is. It's not socialism. It's just it's basically a Scooby-Doo cartoon villain, you know? What's this? Is this socialism? No, it's you, state capitalism.
conception under Marx and under Lenin of socialism was a stateless, classless society. It was an internationalist project where they believed the workers of the world should unite. And because of the failures of the German Revolution, which Lenin was...
Which, by the way, the German Revolution was lost due to the far left refusing to unify with liberals, just as a possibly timely thing to point out.
Relying on for the success of the Soviet state, they ended up going back on it, and they retreated inwards.
A feudal backwater country into being a world superpower. China was literally the single poorest country per capita in the world. They were literally the...
Citation needed. I'm not willing to necessarily buy that without a citation.
Single poorest country per capita in the world. Okay, do you all know that Mao
I'm not entirely willing to buy that, specifically because of what I know about the race for Africa, the scramble for Africa, where the countries of Europe basically just created a massive continent-wide concentration camp of slave labor.
Rippled life expectancy in China.
Okay, again, this is not true. Did China go from one of the poorest countries in the world to an economic superpower? Yes, that is true. Was it socialism that did that? Absolutely not. In fact, the reason for why China is the way it is today is because of what the Chinese call the economic miracle. And this happened after Deng Xiaoping took the helm of the Communist Party of China.
Yup, Dengism, baby. It's Dengism. They try and claim that Deng was a socialist. He's a fucking capitalist, man. The entire... Okay, guys, the entire premise of Dengism was essentially, and is, essentially, hey, we'll make free market economic capitalist zones where you can engage in private business ownership and, running of private businesses. But if you step too out of line, we're going to smack you with the newspaper of the state. And also, essentially, this was a ploy to, allegedly, leverage the labor power of China and, bring in foreign investment. And that would then allow China to rapidly industrialize and, be able to do a lot of things with money in the state, and prepare for worldwide communism. But you'll notice that hasn't really happened. And now China's just, for all intents and purposes, a capitalist state. That's all Dengism really achieved was just turning China into a capitalist country. Dankism is when the weed hits too strong. True.
And instituted a policy of free market capitalism. It was capitalism and the rapid expansion of markets in China that ended up doing that. It's honestly so infuriating to see people point to the success of capitalism and call it socialism, because it's going to just confuse anyone who is interested in socialism, because it just completely muddies what socialism even is. It's just capitalist logic to say that it's good because they're a superpower or good because they have a large GDP. It is. It plays into the same imperialist rhetoric that China is
thanks, Phoenix Dragon.
spouting on state television. The Chinese ruling class are not workers. It's not a workers' party.
Yeah, look, I mean, I know it's an old story at this point. I don't know if it's still the case, but there was a reason they needed to build suicide netting outside of Foxconn factories in China, okay? It's the workers in China were not controlling their workplaces. They were not democratically controlling shit when the working conditions were so bad that the company built netting outside of its buildings to prevent suicides. Like, I'm sorry, that's not. Nah, you're not going to convince me that that was run by workers.
In fact, they let billionaires in the party. To go into, shout out to my Irish chatters. I don't know how many I even have. But James Connolly, who was a Republican socialist leader.
I'm convinced that a lot of the life expectancy argument comes from access to modern medicine and vaccines. China was an agrarian country with none of it, and everyone forgets how half your kids would die before adulthood from diseases that were similar to things like smallpox and polio. Well, yeah, like, also, like, China has advanced extraordinarily rapidly, right? None of this is to, like, denigrate, like, China's advancements, right? Because they have made massive, massive strides. You know, like, imagine over the course of your lifetime, like, going from growing up in, like, essentially, like, an agrarian hovel to, like, being in, like, you know, being in your 60s and suddenly, like, you're living or commuting from, like, your family home that's, like, an actual house in the rural areas of China, and being able to drive a car to, like, the city and, like, be checked out by, like, a really fancy doctor, or, like, hang out at, like, by, like, a pool or something. Like, those are actual realities for some people in China. Obviously not all of them. But, like, there's a reason why the Chinese Communist Party has had relatively high approval ratings that go beyond just the party rigging it in favor of themselves, which obviously they do that too. People in China have experienced a massive influx of wealth. And that's real. That's a real thing. But that influx of wealth came because of capitalist changes to the Chinese economy, right? And, like, along with those changes came like more wealth, and with more wealth you can better your health, and you can eat better, you can have the time to, like, exercise if that's something you need to do for your health. You can go to the doctor. Like, there's a lot of things that people can do now that they weren't able to do when China first started this process.
Once said
that being said, they are absolutely not communist. They're communist in name only. Which, ironically, if you pronounce it out loud, would be Sino, which I believe refers to China.
That a government under capitalist society is nothing but committees for managing the affairs of the rich, and that's literally what China is. Their entire system is that. It is basically just a non-stop centralizing force that is managing the affairs of society.
Mao tripled life expectancy in China, right? So,
but yeah, it's never 100% bad. 100%. Like, a lot of people in China benefited from all of this. I'm just saying it's not socialist for them to have done so. You know, like, capitalism, and this is something that, again, a lot of leftists tend to overlook because it's somewhat inconvenient for the narratives, but, like, capitalism was an improvement on feudalism. Marx wrote about that. Capitalism improved on feudalism. And then socialism improves on capitalism. That's... yes. But yeah, it's not like the magic of socialism made people live longer.
And
Mao also caused a famine through the 4 pests. When Mao told people to kill the sparrows.
Wait, what is the 4 pests? The 4 pests. The 4 pests campaign. The 4 pests. Beginning in the 1950s, the Chinese state mounted the patriotic health campaigns to improve sanitation and public health. In 1958, the campaigns focused on the 4 pests: rats, sparrows, flies, and mosquitoes. Later, sparrows were removed from the list and fleas and lice added. Snails were particularly targeted for eradication because they carried debilitating disease. Wait. Okay, wait. This wasn't just we're going to reduce the amount of these things. It was, we are going to eradicate all fleas, lice, mosquitoes, flies, rats, and sparrows. First of all, you can't. And second of all, if you could, the effects would be absolutely devastating. Like your ecosystem would be on the verge of collapse, dude. Okay. How did that go? How'd that go for them? Oh God, why? Oh, effects here. By April 1960, Chinese communist leaders changed their opinion in part due to intelligence. The influence of ornithologist So Hisin Sheng, who pointed out that sparrows ate a large number of insects as well as grains. While the campaigns were meant to increase yields, concurrent droughts and floods, as well as the lacking sparrow population, decreased rice yields. In the same month, Mao ordered the campaign against sparrows to end. Sparrows were replaced with bedbugs, as the extermination of sparrows had upset the ecological balance, which subsequently resulted in surging locust and insect populations that destroyed crops due to a lack of a natural predator. With no sparrows to eat them, locust populations ballooned, swarming the country and compounding the ecological problems already caused by the Great Leap Forward, including widespread deforestation and misuse of poisons and pesticides. Ecological imbalance is credited with exacerbating the Great Chinese Famine. How big was this? Okay. Famine occurred between 1959 and 1961. Widely regarded as the deadliest famine. Wait, just the deadliest just out of all of them, this is the deadliest one. One of the greatest man-made disasters in human history, with an estimated death toll due to starvation that ranges in the tens of millions. Between 15 to 55 million people. Holy shit. Holy shit. Mao was just like, yeah, dog, sparrows eat grain, just kill all the sparrows, dog. And then 55 million people died. Oh my God, dude. Imagine if 1/6 of the United States population died. Just died in a famine. Holy fuck, dude. Oopsie. It turns out you need food to live. Who would have thought?
Which destroyed the ecosystem and caused a crop failure. Like, how can you praise Mao for raising life expectancy when Mao, who didn't know anything about...
Well, look, it's a lot easier to raise life expectancy if you start counting after 55 million of the most impoverished and vulnerable people in your population die. Okay, it's just start counting after that. It'll be great.
About ecology, decided to get involved in that and cause one of the worst famines in history.
Think about that.
Oh shit, guys! I just realized birds aren't even real. The birds in China were a CIA op. Oh my God, it's all making sense now. It's all making sense now, baby.
Even if you take at face value the unhinged, made-up, fake numbers that the anti-communist people will use about, like, oh, Mao killed like 100 million people or something like that. Even if you accept that number on face value, if you actually look at the number of lives that were saved by increasing life expectancy and getting food on people's tables,
wait,
like literally.
Okay. Oh, the CIA didn't replace birds until the 70s. My bad.
So if you ignore all the people who died, but then you realize that Mao...
Yeah, just start counting. Just start counting life expectancy after the famine, it's fine.
Government gave people the necessities of life to live, except, don't talk about the Great Leap Forward. Don't talk about anything before the Great Leap Forward. I'm just like blown away by how common this kind of rhetoric is becoming when it's based on such an inadequate understanding of the history of these countries. I joined the Communist Party because I believed the things that Benny was saying, and I left it because I decided to start reading books. I started reading books outside of the official Stalinist reading list, and I realized how disconnected all of this is from reality.
It far outpaces the numbers that these fake numbers they say of like how many people they supposedly killed, right? Like
the fake numbers they say? Okay, what's the real number then? Is the real number 0? Did the famine not happen? Like, I'm sorry, like what? What? Okay, citation then.
So quite literally, on the net balance, even if you accept the anti-communist propaganda, you can see that, like, no, Mao was undeniably a net positive for China, right? That communism is undeniably a net.
Okay. I really wish that...
Man. Just out of curiosity. I'm not as familiar with China as I am with Russia. Just out of curiosity. Okay, Mao died in 1976. Like, we just all gonna attribute all of that to Mao, huh? Just the ideology of workers controlling their, the means of production, and we're just not even gonna try and square that circle with being an authoritarian dictator. Okay.
She would actually go into depth on this, because it sounds like she's gonna like pull the Nicole line of saying actually...
Yeah, dude. Mao was born in 1893. He was born in the 1800s. Like, again, it's not that long. Like, this isn't that long ago, chat. You know?
There was no deaths under Mao. Like, okay, so what is the made up number, and then what's the actual number that you would be willing to concede on? That's what I want to know, because she...
Right? Like, Keffels is right. She's not making any direct or verifiable claims. It's all just vibes, man. It's all just, the vibe. Does it have a socialist vibe? Does it have a communist vibe? And you can tell if it has that vibe because it has, the hammer and sickle. It has that vibe because, well, it has a portrait of Mao. It's all vibes. It's the vibes-based economy for leftists.
She's willing to admit it, but what is it then? It is also like this glaring contradiction in her own beliefs. So I don't know how many people in chat know this about why they called him Chairman Mao. So a chairman in a...
They called him Chairman Mao because he came out of nowhere with the steel chair. Ba-bam!
Communist Party. That is not a role that is anything except ceremonial. He was only called chairman in the last days of his life. And in the years before Mao's death, he launched a war against the Communist Party of China called the Cultural Revolution, where he believed, and it turned out to be true, that the leadership of the Communist Party of China wanted to bring capitalism to China.
Yep. Dengism, baby. It was just waiting for him to pass.
That's what powered the economic miracle.
Every time you say Mao, I think you're going to say, Mao wife.
Mao obviously made a lot of fucking mistakes. Absolutely. The four pests thing.
Speaking of Mao wife, Mao was apparently married like 4 different times. Dude was getting busy.
Great Leap Forward was a fucking travesty. However, he was correct at the end of his life that there were people who were trying to bring free market capitalism to China, and it ended up succeeding. And that's why China has such a hard time reconciling their own past today. If you read like official like Communist Party documents, they are very careful with their wording around Mao, because Mao didn't agree with what they were doing. He did not like the direction that the party was heading in. In fact, there is an illegal underground political party in China today called the Maoist Communist Party of China, which is basically a bunch of Maoists who are trying to overthrow the Communist Party of China to bring it back to what it was before the economic miracle. And I'm not saying that because I have any stake or I believe that they're in the right for doing this. I'm just saying it because that's what the current political situation is.
That positive. And look where China is now. China's literally one of the major world powers, and they once again used to be the single poorest per capita country. So do not fool yourselves, right? Do not fool yourselves for even a second.
Okay, it's also important to note when people talk about China and poverty alleviation, that China did not end poverty. China has quite a bit of poverty, especially in the rural areas. The metric that they go by when they talk about the poverty alleviation in China is absolute poverty. And they brought that up to, does anyone have that metric so I do not have to go pull this up? It's $2.15 a day. So that is like the standard that they're aiming for. As of 2020, China has succeeded in eradicating absolute poverty, but not the poverty defined for upper middle income countries which China belongs to. China still has around 13% of its population falling below this poverty line of $5.50 per day in 2020. So yeah, in 2020, the premier, citing the National Bureau of Statistics, said that China still had 600 million people living with less than $140 a month. Although an article from The Economist said that the methodology...
Cool.
NBS was flawed, saying that the figure took the
Sangita.
combined income, which was equally divided.
Hey, progressive
13% of China is 195 million people, roughly 2/3 of the US population. Hey guys, remember when Russia defeated poverty by displacing those pesky zero-income nomadic ranchers and kindly forcing them into the horrific wages and terrible factories? Communism win. My favorite part of the history of the Soviet Union was when like Stalin pressed the big red button that said socialism achieved, and then for the rest of his life he pretended that there were no classes in the Soviet Union.
It's true. That button, it actually got entombed next to Lenin. No one else can press it again. It's true.
And that exploitation had been abolished.
Willing to engage.
Yeah. Stalinist Russia, famously no exploitation. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Actually,
I was about to bring up gulags, but then I remembered that Benny has defended gulags, so...
Because you're here. So I've been like going over this stuff, and I've been using my vast autistic tanky knowledge to roast people with terrible takes because they don't read books. I want to show you one of the funniest things from the USSR's history. Let me grab this. And I'll go back to the React. I'm sorry, but I need to show. Communism in 20 years was a slogan put forth by Nikita Khrushchev at the 22nd Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1961. Khrushchev's quote from his speech at the Congress was from this phrase: "We are strictly guided by scientific calculations. And calculations show that in 20 years, we will build mainly a communist society." In his speech...
Nailed it, bud. Nailed it. Excellent prophecy.
Khrushchev promised that communism would be built in the main by 1980. His assertion that the current generation of Soviet people will live under communism was the final phrase of the third program of the CPSU. Don't worry though, guys. China Socialism 2045.
With like talking about China.
They'll do it. They'll make it happen. There's no way. There's no way this country currently pivoting towards capitalism would not be socialist soon.
We're talking about North Korea.
It's economic horseshoe theory. The farther you go into capitalism, the closer you get to socialism. That's China's realized it. They're playing 5-dimensional chess.
Talking about Cuba, like, be willing to engage with talking about all of these socialist countries because they are very much successful. China is a good demonstration of socialism being successful.
No.
Are you fucking serious?
Is a good demonstration of socialism being successful.
North Korea is...
How? Back up your claims. How? How on earth? North Korea is a good example of socialism being successful? How? Yeah, like, just as an FYI, right? Like, guys, you know that U.S. prisons are bad, right? Like, they're not good. They're not good. Sometimes people die in them. It's not a good place to go. Prison's bad. North Korea's prison system is worse. It just is worse. Their prisons are comparable to concentration camps. They force people to work to death. And they're done so under the auspices of labor training. Okay? Like, in the 90s, by the way, in the 90s, North Korea underwent a famine, right? And the government's response to the North Korean famine was to build more prisons that would act as labor camps to try and fill in the need for food with just coerced labor for people arrested for little to no crime. Just thrown into prison camps. Here's an interesting point. There is a North Korean defector that testified to the U.S. Senate the U.S. Senate Committee on the Judiciary in 2002. Her name's Lee Soon-ok, and in her statement, she said, quote, "I testify that most of the 6,000 prisoners who were there when I arrived in 1987 had quietly perished under the harsh prison conditions by the time I was released in 1992. Other North Korean defectors have given similar statements regarding the prison conditions in North Korea. Again, these are places people are worked to death. But yeah, it's socialism has succeeded. Yeah.
It's a hereditary monarchy.
It's not just a hereditary monarchy, by the way. They literally prop Kim Jong-un up as a god. The population in North Korea believe Kim Jong-un to be a deity. Yeah. I'm trying to find I remember seeing an old propaganda video about Kim Jong Il and Kim Jong Un. I can't find it off the cuff. I'm sorry.
Cuba is a good demonstration of socialism being successful. Same as well with Vietnam. Okay, these are
Vietnam's capitalist. What are you talking about?
successful socialist projects that.
Okay. All right. She doesn't read. She has never opened a goddamn book in her life. Absolutely. No, nothing. No books ever. I like, when I do these things, I like to use primary sources, because when I use primary sources, tankies get super fucking mad at me because they can't refute it. And that's why the Yankee tanky had a meltdown and called me a troon, because I'm working on their own level, right? I'm using
it. By the way, this also works with Christians and religious like fundamentalists. Using texts against people tends to be pretty gets under their skin a bit, you know. Hapsley, sorry off topic, but I needed to share. I'm so disillusioned. It's my 3rd week interning for the California Senate, and the absolute lack of engagement for the 18 to 35 age group is insane. And literally boomers at every meeting making the most unhinged comments and takes. When I say unhinged, I mean unhinged, like grandma go to bed now levels of unhinged. Well, yeah, that's why I talked to you guys about the need for us to get involved. Because A, we have the energy to actually go out and canvass, and B, the craziest fucking people are the ones that show up to these meetings. We need to have, like, actually awake and sane people going to government meetings. Literally to everyone, people, please encourage others to be politically active. Yeah. And you can start by telling them to come over to riverboat.gg and watch a stream, baby. Yeah, Keffels has a lot of patience. Lefty McLefterson.
Literally the same documents from the governments that they believe the words of. So on the topic of if Vietnam is socialist, let me just pull this up. So this is the organ of political theory of Vietnam Communist Party's Central Committee. You're not going to get a more official statement on Vietnam's political state than from this paper. Is this the paper I was looking? Okay, that was the wrong paper. This is the same thing, but this is the paper I actually read. This is clarifying the development of the socialist-oriented market economy. So the official name for Vietnam's economic system is the socialist-oriented market economy. And you go down to like the end of this article. The socialist orientation implies moving towards socialism, which means they are currently a market economy. They are a capitalist free market economy. They are not a socialist country by their own admission. We are convinced that socialist orientation implies a practical meaning. It reminds us that our country is on a long way with different stages to socialism. It must pay attention to the specific context of each stage as to have appropriate policies and guidelines with a view to increasing labor productivity, economic efficiency, constantly improving people's lives. They even say in this, the market economy comes into conflict with the centralized, bureaucratic, and subsidized economy. So the reason I'm just bringing that up is because Benny just said that Vietnam is a socialist country. They're not, and if she actually read what the Vietnamese government says about their own country, she would know this. But instead, I'm like 99% sure she only gets her information about Vietnam from Luna Oi because she blocked me over me mildly criticizing Luna Oi.
Oh man, dude, that's pretty funny though.
Kevels, my partner asked why the dissolution of the Soviet Union happened. Can you explain quickly, pretty please? So the Soviet Union,
Can you please quickly sum up one of the most complicated and important events in geopolitics of the last like 50 years?
Reached communism. They reached a stateless, classless society, and as a result, the Soviet Union no longer needed to exist. The state dissolved, and everyone lived in a utopia on Earth.
Have put food on people's tables, okay, alleviated or eliminated poverty, right? That got people housing, got people food, got people education, okay? That is successful, okay? And so we just need to be debunking these lies. And honestly, it's just that, like, Americans depend on a huge amount of racism. These capitalists depend on a huge amount of racism.
I mean, true, but I want to see where this goes.
Right? Capitalists will tell you anti-China nonsense and expect you to just believe it at face value, right? Because
That's interesting to me because I actually don't think that's the case. Like, I don't think it's the capitalists in the United States who are mad about China. Like, I'm pretty sure that the capitalists in the United States are more than willing to exploit cheap Chinese labor. I'm pretty sure that it's the US State Department and the media.
Like literally China, like China and the United States are so intricately connected with our economies. Capitalists aren't trying to lie to us about China. Like they're fine with the status quo of using China's labor market, and this is so weird. I think Benny's trying to imply here that corporations are trying to tell you lies about how many people China has killed and expecting you to believe it, and if you believe it, that means you're a racist? You're racist against Chinese people? That seems to be her argument, right? Am I misconstruing it?
Surrounding it that has an issue with China. Like, yeah, capitalists don't care. Like, capitalists have the ability to use China as a way for cheap labor where they don't have to worry about labor laws. There are a lot of factories that are in specific economic zones of China where they absolutely do not have to give a single regard for the people working there.
Expect you to be racist. Like let's be real.
Oh god, this is the condensed version of what she was waffling about with Charlie Kirk. Okay, cool.
Capitalists fully expect you to be a racist and expect you to believe anything that they tell you about China. That's it right there.
Oh, okay. Yep. If you believe how many people China killed with their policies and the estimates of that, well then that just means you're a racist. I guess. Okay. If you aren't just accepting the Chinese government's statements at face value, you are a racist. Okay.
There, right? That is it right there. You know, I'm confused. Communism did kill a lot of people from being...
Yeah, it is just like idpol. Like, she actually ended this video off by basically saying criticizing China is racist.
I'm confused. Okay, you're joking. Okay. I didn't read it well. Eliminated absolute poverty. Now they're working on relative poverty. They've even tripled the average income over the past 2 decades. Literally, Strin. Literally. And, like, nobody's gonna sit here.
I wonder what their dominant means of doubling wages was over the last 2 decades. Definitely couldn't have anything to do with capitalist investment and production. Nope, no sir. When you look at China, they have a communist party. That means they must be communist. Of course. Hey, tipster.
Here, and like don't let these weirdos like
that doesn't have anything to do with socialism.
People have been asking me to raid. Wait, you can raid people on YouTube? I don't know how to give someone perms to do that on YouTube, President Sunday. I'm literally finding out about this just now. Wait. God, the back end of YouTube is such dog shit. Go into community settings. Okay. 1 second. My channel. Definitely not it. Video. Settings. Community. Okay. Oh, all channel. Do I just need to enable all channels can redirect to my content? Is that the box I need to click? That's the one? Okay. Boom. Done. Setting has been saved. Hey, Somnia Static, how you doing? How you doing, lovely? Where you been all my life? Hey, Shaloon. You have a good night too, President Sunday. This video is cancer. Yeah, I'm dying. We've been going over this for like 2 hours. It's extraordinarily frustrating. Also, is like she just the video she put out is like 8.5 minutes long. She's almost 7 minutes into it and like hasn't backed up any of her claims at all. She like the videos just know socialism hasn't failed and it just doesn't make any claims. It's wild.
Like, I think you can both say, yeah, this is great. I'm glad that there are less people living in poverty in China without having to say China is a socialist country.
But also, like, again, that would be something to be expected from a move from a, you know, agrarian feudal society, economic system to a more capitalist society. Like, Marx literally wrote about the effects of, you know, how capitalism was better than feudalism. Like, this is the thing. We know about this already. Like, we know that there are better economic systems, or that there were economic systems in the past, and capitalism works better than them. Like, and alleviates more poverty than them. So, like, why is, like, what's with the smug argumentation of, like, well, you see, did you know that China alleviated poverty? Oh, sweet, how'd they do that? With communism? Oh, how are they communist? There aren't as many poor people. It's not a good argument. It's not. I'm sorry. If that's your bar, like, I guess the invention of capitalism in the first place was socialist. You know, it brought more people out of poverty. That's crazy, dog.
And it was socialism that made it so that they could alleviate poverty. That's a lie. That's based on misinformation. And it's a really ignorant statement
hey, thanks,
that a
Squidus.
lot of especially Western leftists make because they don't read any primary documents when making these claims. So,
I mean, that's part of it. What Keffel said there is part of it. But the other part of it is like, one is not reading, obviously. Another is not having a grasp on actual history. And another part of it is just the inability to argue correctly. You know? Like, when you argue something, you have to have a premise and then points that premise up. But all we have here is premise, stated, you know, with confidence. But that's not an argument. An argument isn't just stating something is so with confidence. That's just posturing. That's just positioning yourself. And when you're posturing and positioning, you know, frankly, you don't have to do the reading because you're not even making an argument in the first place.
I made a commitment.
Good night, Archangel.
Going forward, I am going to be having more people on my stream from China, from Taiwan, from Tibet, from Xinjiang, who can speak on these issues, because so often in these conversations, people from the regions we're talking about are geopolitical pawns. Their humanity is not recognized, and we need to actually listen to what they have to say about the places that they are from.
And like, don't let these weirdos don't let these weirdos get you all distracted, okay? China's not a perfect country. No country's a perfect country. Every country is gonna have problems, right? And like, that's what's wild is like, so for example, China does not have homelessness like we do, right?
What? I've literally been to Beijing and
bread into toast. You can do a bit better. Like, I don't know. There are people who like position themselves as like bimbos, as like their brand, but like are still extraordinarily smart people. But like this is not a good look. This has not been showcasing great argumentation.
Seen people sleeping on the streets. That's just completely made up.
Oh hey, VCC TV, I can see you in the comments. Look at that. We got an appearance of VCC TV.
Right? The homelessness that China has is a result of their residency like program, right? And the
What?
Homelessness in China is a significant social issue. In 2011, there were approximately 2.4 million homeless adults and 179,000 homeless children living in the country. And this goes up. In 2015, it was reported there were 3 million homeless people.
Limits.
I mean, I also just have to say, like, I don't necessarily know that I trust the numbers on how many people are homeless in China, but you know, like that's still a lot, you know? Watching Jack's videos and seeing my yellow Nick scrolling through chat is a thing? Hell yeah, Salmon Moose. That's right. You should subscribe so you can see yourself better in chat. Let's go.
That people have on like, oh, like if you want to live or work here, you need like, you know, to do like this particular type of like permit or something. They've got this residency like program where they have social services prepared for you, but it is in your hometown. And
I mean, you could make the same argument for the United States. In the United States, we have social services for you, but you need to go to a location that isn't overwhelmed. You know? There are social services available to you. You just have to get to them before the other people. You know, there are social services in the next city over. You just have, you just have to get to them. Like this isn't an argument about like a homeless solution for homelessness that actually works.
So if you want those social services, you have to go to your hometown to get them.
Wait, what? So you have to... That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Like a lot of the...
Look, if you're just homeless, go to a different city. You just fucking move.
Extreme poverty in China is in the rural areas, and
just sell your non-existent house and move. Okay?
There is a mass exodus from these rural areas, like, to the cities. So she's basically saying that if you were fleeing the mass poverty of the rural areas of China to go to the city to try and find work, then you're not actually homeless. You're just not following the government's guidelines. That's not...
Also, like, just to point this out, maybe it's not good to set up a system that ties people to the land they were born on, because that kind of seems Like, you're just recreating feudalism right there. You know, like, you're tied to the land you were born on, and your feudal lord has an obligation to provide for you. Like, that's not actually a great, a great argument there.
Good. That's literally encroaching on people's right to movement.
So there is homelessness. There are some people who rough sleep, right? But like they could.
Man, every admission of something flawed in China is followed by a but.
Go back to their hometown if they wanted to, and all of a sudden get all these social services, right? And
you could just, if you're in San Francisco, you could just go to Boise, Idaho, and use their social services that are far less taxed. I'm sure you just go, if you're in New York, just go to Miami. There are a lot of places you can go. It's a bad argument.
And so
what?
That's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem. That's not like a perfect system. But guess what? The leadership of China says that that's a problem that they're working on and they're trying to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that basically every country in the world can say, yeah, homelessness is a problem. And why are you giving them such a big pat on the back for saying, yeah, this isn't good?
How to balance that out with their like long-term planning of we just need to be able to know where people are living so that we can make our long-term plan. And that's like, it's like a whole entire thing, right? And so
I've noticed this now. This keeps coming up. This is happening now with Benny. This happened with Hassan. What is with the just move rhetoric? It's like conservative logic.
True.
And I'm just really surprised people who think that they're leftists and progressives are using that rhetoric.
Working on.
I mean, it's also related to the don't like it here, just go back to your own country. Or you don't like it here, go back to where you came from. Like, it is infantile. Infantile.
On reconciling the contradictions in their own society. So, like, anybody that comes up and says, oh, but China has this, that, or the other problem. Like, yeah, but, like, does the United States have that problem? The United States has that problem.
Yes? So what? After I watched this for the first time, I realized that the problems with Benny and TYT actually...
Wait, that was the end of her video, right? Yeah, that was the end of her video. Oh my god. It just ends with her being like, "Oh, and you know what? If you think that China's bad, well, you know what? The United States also has problems." So that's insane, dude. That's insane. You have to actually argue for your position. None of these things were arguments. They were all premises.
Went deeper. I don't understand how she believed and advocated for these things while being at such a liberal media outlet. I knew some of this about Benny, but when transphobia was the issue, I was willing to put this aside and side with another trans person. Like, I do think that there is a time.
I mean, for the record, I also knew that she had tanky tendencies, but I memory hold her debate with Charlie Kirk, and all of this is making that flood back. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Time and a place to have these kinds of conversations. Like, if a trans person has like dog politics and they're being discriminated against, I'm going to show them solidarity.
Yeah. Common Keffels W. Yeah, look, you can be you can have solidarity with somebody who's experienced like unjust discrimination on the basis of them being like trans or black or something, but also severely disagree with their politics. These aren't contradictory, you know? Common wiggler, yeah. You know, a debate is bad when someone like me who doesn't entirely understand the subject be like, yikes, yeah, right?